So what if you had it all? I mean, everything. The seven-figure income, the mansion, the private jet, that prized Ferrari. But what if it was costing you everything that truly mattered? Today, we're going to dive into Robin Sharma's incredible modern fable, the story of a man who was forced to trade his entire material empire for a life of real, genuine fulfillment.
Okay, so this quote right here, it was sitting on the desk of a guy named Julian Mantle. And Julian, well, he was a legal titan, a man who really seemed to be the master of his own universe. He was this brilliant, fearless trial attorney, the kind of courtroom legend that newspapers just love to write about. And in his mind, he was absolutely unconquerable.
On the outside, he was the very definition of success. But if you pulled back the curtain on that spectacular life, the reality was starkly different. At only 53 years old, he looked like he was in his late 70s. His health was shot, his marriage had failed, his relationships were just in ruins, and that spark, that fire that once drove him, it had pretty much gone out. He was completely consumed by this hunger for more, but it was leaving him feeling totally and utterly empty.
And then, well, the inevitable happened. Right in the middle of another high-stakes case, his out-of-balance life finally caught up with him. The master of his fate was suddenly a victim, squirming on the courtroom floor. And this wasn't just a health crisis, it was a soul crisis. This was his wake-up call.
But his life didn't end that day. You could say it was actually the explosive start of a completely new one. After he recovered, Julian made a decision that just shocked everyone who knew him. He quit. He gave up the law, turned his back on his entire old life, and went searching for answers.
And he didn't just walk away, he systematically dismantled the whole empire he had built. The mansion, the plane, even that shiny red Ferrari, he sold it all. He shed all the baggage of his past and boarded a flight to India, looking for this mystical group of sages who are rumored to live high up in the Himalayas. For 3 years, he just vanished from the world he knew. No calls, no postcards, nothing. And when he finally reappeared, knocking on his old colleague's door, it wasn't just a comeback. It was more like a resurrection. You see, the man who left was basically a ghost, sickly, anxious, his face a mess of wrinkles. But the man who returned, he was youthful, vital, and was just radiating this incredible sense of peace. The transformation was so complete, he was almost unrecognizable. He had found the sages of Savannah, and they had shared their secrets with him.
But this ancient knowledge, it came with a condition. The sages made him promise that he wouldn't keep it all for himself. No, he had to return to the West and share their wisdom with a world that was, in a lot of ways, just as sick and lost as he had been.
So what was this profound wisdom? Well, the sages didn't just hand him some dense philosophical book. Instead, they gave him a story, a very strange, mystical fable that held all the keys to an enlightened life.
His teacher asked him to close his eyes and just picture a scene. First up, a magnificent, incredibly peaceful green garden filled with the most spectacular flowers you can possibly imagine.
Okay, got that? Now, rising from the center of that garden, picture a towering, 6-story red lighthouse.
Then, all of a sudden, the lighthouse door creaks open, and out stumbles this colossal Japanese sumo wrestler. We're talking 9 feet tall, weighing 900 pounds.
And here's the final weird detail. This massive wrestler, he's almost completely naked, wearing nothing but a pink wire cable.
It sounds totally absurd, right? A childish story about a sumo wrestler in a garden. But what Julian learned is that every single element in this bizarre little fable is a powerful symbol. It's a key to unlocking a better way of living.
So let's start decoding this thing, shall we? We'll begin with the very first symbol, that beautiful, lush garden.
The garden, as the sages explained, is your mind. It's that simple. If you care for it, if you nurture it and cultivate it, it will blossom beyond your wildest dreams. But if you let weeds take root, if you allow it to get contaminated, you'll never, ever find true peace. So what are those contaminants? Well, it's all the toxic waste we dump into our own minds every single day. Things like worries, anxieties, brooding over things we can't change. The sages taught that worry literally drains the mind of its power, and eventually, it injures the soul. You simply cannot afford the luxury of a negative thought. And just think about the sheer scale of this for a second. The average person has about 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000! That's 60,000 chances to either plant a flower or to let a weed grow.
But here's where it gets really staggering. Of those 60,000 thoughts, a full 95% of them are the exact same thoughts you had the day before. The sages call this the tyranny of impoverished thinking. We become prisoners of our own repetitive and often negative mental habits.
And this leads us to the first and maybe most important lesson. If you want to manage your life, you have to start by managing your mind. Your outer world is just a reflection of your inner world. If you control your thoughts, you start to control your destiny. Now, this requires a huge shift in how you think. You have to stop judging everything as good or bad. The sages taught that there are no mistakes in life, only lessons. Even your most painful, challenging experiences are just opportunities for you to grow. From struggle comes strength.
Ultimately, it's all about choice. Look, you can't always control what happens in your life, but you can always control how you respond to it. And when you consistently start looking for the positive, for the lesson in every single circumstance, you stop being a prisoner of your past. You become the architect of your future.
And that brings us to the question this whole idea leaves us with. It's a really simple one, but it's also incredibly profound. So just take a moment and really think about it. If your mind truly is a garden, what have you been planting there lately?